Hi, my name is Dr. Manus. In this video, I will be providing a brief introduction to self-concept. Let's get started. The main objective of this video is to show you that the self-concept strongly influences consumer behavior. So, what is self-concept? Self-concept can be defined as the beliefs a person holds about their own attributes and how he or she evaluates the self on these qualities. These beliefs could include how you feel and think about your appearance. We can also think of our self-concept as a collection of identities, where each element or identity contributes to our self-concept. For example, you may have the identity of a student if you're watching this video as part of your class lecture. An identity is formally defined as any category label with which a consumer self-associates. Can you think of any labels that you use to describe yourself? For me, I self-associate with many different labels, including hiker, professor, and researcher. We also have what's called the collective self. This is where a person derives his or her identity in a large measure from a social group. For example, many students join a fraternity, sorority, or other university organization during their time in college. They often highly identify with that group during their time in college and sometimes after college. Additionally, in the United States, many individuals are highly involved in a political party and derive a large part of their identity from their political affiliation. Now that we have covered some of the basics of self-concept, let's discuss the importance of self-esteem. Self-esteem is formally defined as the positivity of a person's self-concept. We can also think of self-esteem in more simple terms as how confident someone is about themselves. For example, someone with low self-esteem or someone that lacks confidence expects that they will not perform well in a particular activity or task. For example, if you lack confidence or lack self-esteem about your intellectual ability, you may feel like or expect that you're not going to perform well on a test. As a result, many of individuals with low self-esteem, what they're trying to do is they're trying to avoid embarrassment, failure, and rejection, and so they will avoid whatever it is if they can. Individuals with low self-esteem may also engage in what's called social comparison, and that's where they evaluate their appearance by comparing it to people depicted in advertisements. There's also been several studies that have looked at self-esteem with a marketing lens. One that Sarah Lee conducted was they found that people or consumers with low self-esteem preferred portion control snack items because these individuals, they felt like they lacked self-control. So if we think about this from a marketing standpoint, the Oreos we can get in a big box, right? They sell it in party size, family size. They sell them in large packages. Well, the consumers that had the option to get smaller packages, say like a 2-pack of Oreos or a 6-pack of Oreos, they would choose those, the portion controlled, over the large family size because they felt like they lacked self-control. There's also been studies that have shown that consumers who are made to feel more powerful or to be more confident, that they tend to spend more money on themselves because they feel that, okay, I'm worth it. I'm worth spending money on myself. Whereas people who experience a feeling of powerlessness or low self-esteem, they're more likely to spend more money on others. So that gives us an idea of how self-esteem is important to our self-concept. We can also delineate our notion of self-concept into ideal and actual selves. Ideal self is our conception of how we would like to be. In contrast, actual self is our more realistic appraisal of the qualities we do and do not have. So oftentimes there's a struggle or a contrast between our ideal self and our actual self. For example, I could say that I would like to make healthy decisions, and I do make healthy decisions. However, my cabinets may be filled with junk food at home. Also, I could be wearing running shoes. However, I don't run on a consistent basis. So while I have an ideal self that wants to be healthier and wants to appear like I'm striving for a more athletic physique, my actual self may not be healthy or athletic. So marketers and companies try to create products that provide certain benefits that can help us reach our ideal self. For example, if you wanted clearer skin, they have products for that, such as skin cream. If you want to be healthier, they make a wide array of products that can help someone be healthier, right? Food products, also other related products, such as running shoes and things like that to help you be healthier. They also have products that can help you achieve a better physique, like a gym membership or at-home gym products. Marketers also develop products that can help us be consistent with our actual self. So if we're keeping with the same example, if I am actually not that healthy and I like junk food, there are plenty of products to satisfy my junk food cravings, right? I could get cookies, I could get chips, lots of different products that they make out there that could help satisfy my craving for junk food. While we have discussed the actual and ideal selves, we also have what's called the avoidant self, which is the type of person we don't want to be. Often, our behavior represents a struggle of not falling into the avoidant self while trying to aspire to our ideal self, but often falling into the habits of our actual self. And this is why many of us engage in impression management to manage what others think of us so that people see the best versions of our self-concept. In a previous video, I had talked about how we as consumers oftentimes engage in actions that resemble actions in a play. And in the same way, we can think of the way that in life we have different roles that we play at different times that require different scripts, props, and costumes. And so we can think of that in that we have multiple selves and that our self has different components or role identities, and only some of those identities are active at any given point in time. So we have multiple selves, multiple identities that make up who we are as individuals. While we all have multiple selves, people often see themselves as they imagine others see them. And a consumer's possession will allow people to place him or her into a social role that helps to answer the question, who am I now? So to some extent, who am I now is our possessions. And people, whenever they see us out in the world, they often make inferences of our personality and who we are as people based on our consumption patterns. So people will use an individual's consumption behaviors to identify that person's identity. So people look at clothes, grooming habits, and choice of leisure activities, food preferences, home decorating choices to make inferences about that person. We also have what's called symbolic self-completion theory, where people who have an incomplete self-definition will complete their identity through acquisition. And they complete this by what they acquire, but also the things that they display to the outside world that helps them associate their self-concept with that possession. And this also has to do with self-product congruence. And this is where we use objects to maintain our self-concept. And by doing so, we become more attached to those objects. For example, someone who drives a Mini Cooper may rely on the image of Mini to relate information about their identity as a fun, distinctive, stylish person. The more the person relies on that possession as a way of defining and supporting their identity, the more attached that person will be to their identity. This relates to the concept of the extended self, where oftentimes individually we have personal possessions that represent who we are, like cars, clothing, and our extended self is represented in those possessions. We also have these things represented in our family, so our choice of residence, the furnishings that we have in our home. Many of our decisions are represented as extended self. People can view these things and have a greater understanding of who we are, our consumption patterns. We also can make inferences based on the community that you live in. So if you live in a particular neighborhood or the town that you live in, people start making inferences about who you are. For example, I grew up in Hobbs, New Mexico. Many people associate that with an oil field town, and people make certain inferences whenever I tell them I'm from Hobbs. And then people also make inferences about the groups that we belong to. So I had mentioned earlier in the lecture that some people join fraternities, sororities, and other university organizations to become involved in that, and a large part of their identity is in those groups. Well, people will make inferences about you based on your affiliation with those groups and other groups that you may join in the future. So we've covered the self-concept and talked about some basic aspects of the self-concept. If you have questions about the self-concept or any other consumer behavior questions, please feel free to email me at kmanus@nmsu.edu.